In this video, I'm going to show you how you can create Hollywood-level character animations in Blender. Let's go. So, photorealistic environments combined with complex character animations. These are basically the core elements to any animated film. And how do all of these big studios do it? Take a look at something like, for example, Love, Death, and Robots. Tons of characters everywhere, animated perfectly inside of beautiful cinematic worlds. I mean, these are the types of films that inspired me to try to become a 3D filmmaker. But for the longest time, I had no idea where to start, and you might be feeling this way too. Well, with this video, I hope to provide you with an insight into my workflow so that you'll have all the resources and information you need to create your own films. So let me go ahead and run you through the game plan, an overview of each step that I took to complete these animations, and how this video will be formatted. This video is going to start by breaking down everything you need to know about character animation, as that is the core focus of all of these projects. And the techniques are global, which means no matter what your environment is, the character animation workflow will stay the same. Once you master these skills, you can truly do anything. You'll learn how to utilize free motion capture animations from online, how to easily set up advanced control rigs, how to customize and adjust your animations by hand, how to blend multiple animations together, and even how to have your characters hold items like this assault rifle or pistol. If you want to take it a step even further into studio quality level animations, I'll also show you my entire Rococo motion capture suit workflow. From recording movements to setting up a control rig, cleaning up the animation to convert it into studio quality, and finalizing. Once we finish up on characters, I'll give you a clear and concise breakdown of how I created each of these environments, from blocking out to texturing to lighting and rendering. All right, now with everything laid out, let's get started. So the first step, character models. You can find all sorts of fantastic character models out there, and a lot of them are free too. If you're just beginning or learning the techniques, I'd recommend checking out Mixamo. They have a few free models that will work great, like this futuristic soldier guy. If you're going for something more studio quality, you might have to pay a bit. For example, the big, medium, small library has amazingly realistic characters with great topology. These characters are what I will be using for my animations. Now here is a huge plus for you. You don't need to worry about rigs or vertex groups, whatever. As long as your model is in T-pose or A-pose, I'll show you how to add your own rig. Okay, you downloaded your character and dropped them into Blender, and you're probably wondering how this lifeless shape is gonna run and jump and talk. Well, remember when I mentioned adding a rig? That's the next step. But what is a rig anyway? The way 3D characters are animated is controlled by what's called a rig. A rig is essentially the character's skeleton, and that skeleton can communicate with vertex groups on the model. Vertex groups are heat map based information that determines how joints and other parts of the model will move. The relationship between the rig and vertex groups is super important, and a high quality one will ensure that your model animates correctly. That is exactly why I ain't making that from scratch. Instead of creating our own, we are going to utilize Mixamo's excellent auto rig tool. The process begins in Blender. I'll click on my model and make sure to remove any modifiers, vertex groups, or keyframes. Now apply rotation and scale, and one final special step regarding materials. Unfortunately, if you export your model with materials, the auto rig tool often fails because of image texture file sizes. So what we can do to get around this is to duplicate your model, and on the duplicated model, hit this little button to copy the materials. These copied materials will contain all of the image textures. On the model you are going to export, delete all of the image textures from the materials, but make sure to keep the materials themselves on the model. Now, later when we import the rigged character into Blender, we can quickly convert the materials without image textures into the ones with image textures. Once all of this is done, click on your model, File, Export as FBX, hit Only Selection, and uncheck Animation. Now in Mixamo, let's upload the character to the auto rigger, determine key points on the model like the groin, arms, and legs, and it will output a pretty great rigged character. Now export this character to Blender, bring back our materials, and we are done. Okay, so now we have a rigged character, they are ready for animation, but how do we actually put an animation on this guy? Much less customize them to do whatever we want. Well, it all starts with something called a control rig. Like I said earlier, the rig is basically your character's skeleton that controls animation. A basic rig, like what we have now, is actually very limited in how flexibly you can control your character, because all you can do is grab each individual bone and move it into position, but then each of these bones aren't even interacting with each other realistically. What we want is a more advanced rig, which is called a control rig. You can see with this control rig, I can grab the hips, for example, move them around anywhere I want, and the entire body will respond realistically. I can do the same with the arms or the legs or any other major section of the body. To add a control rig to a Mixamo rig, I am using the Mixamo control rig add-on. It's very simple. All you have to do is select your character and hit Create Control Rig. Now we need to jump back into Mixamo and download an animation. I'll download this running animation and import it into Blender. Using the Mixamo Control Rig plugin, select your character, then select your animation you downloaded as the source, and hit Apply Animation to Control Rig. Now we have an animated character that also has a control rig, which sets us up perfectly to customize our animation. Some examples of what we can do now are moving the hands to hold an assault rifle, or clean up glitchy leg movements, or turn the character's head in directions it wasn't otherwise looking. You can really do anything you want, so let me show you how. We are going to use a feature in Blender called nonlinear animation. You can think of it like photoshopping your animation. It's all completely non-destructive. I'll show you how to use it with a quick example. I have a character walking animation, but instead of walking with their hands down, I want them to be up, kind of like a zombie. I'll click on my character and enter pose mode. Then I'll select either all the bones with A or just the individual bones you want to work with. Now I'll open up the nonlinear animation window. I'll click on the first animation layer here and change the blending mode to combine. This makes it non-destructive, very important. Then I'll hit this little button to push the layer down. This is basically allowing us to add new edits on top. Now I'll go to the first frame I want my edit to begin on, and I'll hit I to add a keyframe. This new keyframe represents the current pose that my character is in. Now I'll go to the next frame, move the arms upwards, and add another keyframe by hitting I. This keyframe represents the new pose I made on the character. Now you can see if I play the animation, the arms shoot up. If I want the arms to come up more slowly, just move the second keyframe away from the first. And now you can see it takes more time to transition from the base pose into the edited pose. If you want the arms to go back to where they were originally, just copy the first keyframe you made and paste it somewhere at the end. Now you can see it transitions slowly back to the original. If I want to add edits on top of this, just push the layer down again with this button and add a keyframe before making edits to save the current position. Pose pose your character differently and add a keyframe for that, and then you can copy and paste the first keyframe to the end to close off the edit. In this new example, you can see I made the character crouch down, then stand up again. I would recommend practicing all of this. Okay, so now we know how to utilize singular animations and customize them, but how do we actually stitch these animations together? You know, in an animated film, characters aren't just doing one thing. They're running and jumping and hiding behind a wall or talking to someone. You know, these are all separate animations that need to be brought together as one. So let me show you how to do it. Let's download two animations from Mixamo, a running animation and a jumping animation. Import them into Blender and organize them all side by side and into collections. This will make things much simpler for us to work with. Now, with our nonlinear animation sheet open, let's name the animations the according action. For example, this guy is running. I'll name it run, and the other I'll name jump. Now on the Mixamo control rig add-on, I'll attach the running animation to our soldier. On the nonlinear animation sheet, I'll hit this drop-down button to essentially save the animation as a layer on our soldier. So now the running animation is a saved layer. Now I'll go back to the control rig add-on and add our jump animation and save it as a layer as well. Now, if I put these layers side by side, you can see that one is running and the other is jumping. If your first animation is not playing, that's because you need to set the extrapolation to nothing on both your layers. Before blending the two animations together, let's start by looping our running animation. I can go to the end of the first running layer, hit Shift A, and select our running layer to create a duplicate. Now, currently you can see the beginning of the second running animation begins where the first one started. Obviously, we want them to continue running forward and not glitch back like this. In order to fix that, let's go into pose mode and select the base bone. It's the one on the floor. Now let's go to the last frame of the first running animation layer and add a keyframe. Then on the first frame of the second running animation layer, let's move the character forward and add a keyframe. You might have to adjust the position of the character to perfectly match where the first running animation left off. Now our character continues to run forward, effectively seamlessly looping the animation. All right, let's add our jumping animation now. I'll grab my jumping animation, move the layer down on top of the running layer. Our objective here is to find the most closely matching pose between the running and jumping animation and place it there. For example, here, I'll find the point in the running animation where the right foot is down, and on the jumping animation, I'll make sure it starts where the right foot is beginning the jump. I'll keyframe the position of the jumping animation to match the location of the running layer. And now you can see, kind of looks like the jump takes off at the same point that the running leaves off. However, obviously things still look a little janky. The transition isn't smooth. In order to fix this, I'll utilize this blend in tool on the jumping animation. And just like magic, it perfectly blends the animations together to create something that looks seamless. Now our character runs, then jumps. Beautiful. This is the exact method you'll use to blend any two animations together, and the possibilities are truly endless. Okay, now for the really cool part. What if we want our character to hold items like guns or swords or, any sort of object? How do we do that? At first, giving your character the ability to wield weapons seems super complex. Like, how does a motion capture animation interact with a separate animation controlling an assault rifle? And how do you make both of their hands stick onto the gun while also dynamically moving with the rest of the body? First, we need the actual weapon. In this case, I have a simple assault rifle. Let's position it next to our character's arms. Now add a child of constraint to the weapon, make the target your character, and the bone should be the right hand. Now rotate and position the gun until it looks like your character is grabbing it. If I play the animation, you can see the weapon actually works properly on the right hand, but the left hand isn't grabbing anything. To fix this, select the left hand and add an inverse kinematics constraint. Set the chain length to 3 and check rotation. Now add an empty, place it where the left hand should be holding on the gun, parent it to the gun, and back on the inverse kinematics constraint target, set this to be the empty. Now just rotate the empty in position onto where you want the left hand to hold the weapon. It works! Now, let's use the nonlinear animation method to control how the character is holding the gun. For example, we can keyframe a more focused scope position. If you want to take character animation even more seriously and are interested in a dedicated course helping you truly master this workflow, then it's your lucky day. Because I have actually released the ultimate character animation course on my Patreon. In fact, I am designing it to be the best place to learn 3D. We have the character animation course, the abandoned hallway course, the Tundra Mountain course, Cyberpunk City course, and much, much more. All for literally $5 a month. Not only am I posting courses and tutorials regularly where you can learn how to create professional scenes and animations, but you also unlock the ability to have my help with your projects whenever you need. We have a fantastic community growing every single day, full of artists who are seriously leveling up their 3D skills, and at the same time, making my job, my dream job as a 3D artist possible. So if that sounds cool to you, you should absolutely jump in. The link to my Patreon is in the description. You should check it out. Thanks. Now let's move on to my official studio quality character animation workflow. Yo, I can't tell you how fun this is and so useful for creating amazing character animations. And it's a workout. I am in the Rococo motion capture suit, which the team at Rococo were so kind to send to me. And I got the suit, I got the gloves, and this basically transforms your house into a motion capture studio, which is crazy. So yeah, now I'll show you how I go from recording these movements into a polished, high quality character animation. So let's go. Let's start on our first animation for this hallway scene. Okay, so I want my character to sort of run out of this doorway into this hallway and then look at two possible threat directions, aiming a pistol back and forth. So let's go ahead and get started. I can go over to Rococo Studio. Okay, so here I am in Rococo Studio. I can go ahead and just hit the record button after calibrating. Should be good. Okay, now I'm gonna run over here, do my movements. So I sort of want to go over here. Okay. Okay, something like that, something like that. All right, now I can stop recording and I can go ahead and just review what I recorded. Okay, this is where it starts. Run out of the hall. Look back and forth, start walking down the hallway, look back. Yeah, this looks great. This looks great. And then the export is super easy. I'm just gonna select FBX and then I'll select Mixamo because I'm using Mixamo rigs and 30 FPS, that's the frame rate of my scene. And then I can just pick where I wanna export it to and click Export Clip. I'll export this animation and bring it into Blender, and using the Mixamo Control Rig add-on, I can attach the animation to my rigged character. Awesome. Now I'm going to open up the nonlinear animation sheet as well as the graph editor to help me clean up and polish the animation. As you can see here, we have a few glitches in the legs. So I can select the problem bones and in the graph editor, highlight the frames where the problem exists and hit decimate keyframes. Essentially, this interpolates between the first and last keyframes of your selection, therefore smoothing out any issues in between. I'll repeat this for any other weird movements, jitters, or glitches for each according bone. Now, to fix issues like this, where the hand is sort of clipping into the body, I can use nonlinear animation. Just push down your layer, which represents the base keyframes, and for your new layer, make sure it's set to combine. Now I'll grab the hand, pull it out, and keyframe this new location. Now it's fixed. I'll repeat the same technique for the character's general pose as well. For example here, let's take a look at another animation I made for the sheriff. You can see when she crouches down, it looks a bit off. So I can keyframe an adjusted pose for this position that feels more natural. This is why nonlinear animation is so insanely powerful. Not only does it serve as a way to clean up buggy movements, but you have complete control over your character's poses. Get familiar with the graph editor and the nonlinear animation sheet, and you will be creating studio quality level animations in no time. If you guys are interested in creating super high quality custom character animations like I am, make sure to check out the Rococo motion capture suite in the description. And using this link and code, you can get a huge discount. Take advantage of it. Okay, you guys, I hope that I provided a solid look into my character animation workflow, and now let's jump into environment creation. Good looking characters are only one part of the puzzle, because if they don't exist in a beautiful and immersive world, your animations are going to fall kind of flat. Now, my standard for environments is very high. I like my worlds to be truly stunning. So, how did I create these? Well, let's start by breaking down the unforgiving apocalypse landscape environment I created for this animation I named Vanguard. First step is finding inspiration and references, which I'll drop into a massive PureRef sheet. I'll also write a little bit of lore and world building, which is kind of an underrated process, but I think it really helps me with the environment creation. Now I'll block out the scene, just getting rough ideas of scale and distance from Google Earth, and then sizing everything up with cubes, planes, and simple lights. Now I'll begin working on the foreground. I'll sculpt roughly what I want it to look like, and add my materials. Here I have a rocky material and a dry cracked mud material. Everything looks even better once I add rock scans from Quixel. Now I'll play with the lighting a bit to get that distinct ray of sun hitting the rocks and revealing the characters. Next, I'll add an even deeper level of detail into the foreground by simulating rock scatter. I can just take a clump of low poly rocks, add a rigid body simulation to them, and let them fall into the cracks and corners of the foreground. Look how much amazing detail this adds. Next, I'll move on to the midground, which I'll create using Gaia. Here, I want a rocky cliffside. Here's what it looks like in Gaia, and then I'll position them how I want in the scene. On the side here, I'd like a rocky hill, also made in Gaia. Here's what it looks like. And I'll position it just like this. I'll take the same rock scans that I used for the foreground, scale them up to be much bigger, and position them around my midground to fake cliffs and giant boulders. Now, for the very, very far background mountains, I'll also make them in Gaia, and I'll move them around until it creates this nice cozy valley below. Okay, so things really look terribly unrealistic without atmosphere at this distance, so don't be too hard on yourself if your landscape doesn't look so great until you've established atmosphere. To get good looking atmosphere, I'm just covering my entire world with a cube with a principled volume as the shader. Here's my settings. Next, I'd like a futuristic alien looking colony set up in the valley. I created this by assembling kitbash spaceship pieces until I developed my own custom building. And then I textured it with some simple tech trim sheets. For the lights, it's just pictures of windows with an emission spread around the building with the shrink wrap modifier. Alright, that environment is done. Now let's break down the hallway environment, which is quite a different type of scene. Now for this environment, I didn't use very many references, actually just one, this fantastic art created by Vitaly Smik. First, I'll establish a blockout, get some rough lighting in, and quickly begin working on the textures. For the floor, I'm using a basic tile, but I'm making sure to really dial in the roughness to get nice reflections. A high quality displacement map is also very important here. For the walls, I'm blending together a few different types of plaster, but most importantly, I'm painting decals by hand to achieve a next level of realism. I'll add graffiti and grunge coming from the corners, floor, and ceiling. My advice for building realistic materials is to layer, layer, layer. There should be color variation, dirt, grunge. Corners should be dark, like in real life. Reflections should be punchy. Really utilize everything you possibly can to push this away from that stale 3D look. The scene also greatly benefits from atmosphere. Here it is with and without. And finally, let's take a look at the Pacific Northwest environment I created for this Western type animation. Similarly to every project you make, you should start with a block out. Here I established the main ideas about the foreground size, boulders, and mountains. Next, I'll build the foreground material by blending tundra textures from Quixel, and I'll add in some beautiful rock scans. Foliage is very important here, and I'm scattering it using geometry nodes. When working with foliage, it's important to test everything on a small plane first. Then once your materials and scatter systems work well together, bring it over to the larger main terrain. Here I have some small tundra plants, bushes, and fir trees. For the background mountains, I created them in Gaia and paid close attention to creating solid masks. The main mask I'm utilizing is the difference between cliff rocks and grass. This is what the mountain looks like with just grass and now cliffs. I'll add on my trees here as well. It looks beautiful. The lighting was very simple, literally just a basic overcast HDRI, and of course, solid atmosphere. Okay, you guys, I hope I provided a good insight into my environment creation process, but as this video was mostly about character animation, I understand that I might have skipped over some steps. So if you are interested in a more step-by-step, super thorough breakdown of all the environments in this video, you can check out my Patreon, where again, I have a course on all of these environments. Definitely check it out. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed and got something out of this video, and I will see you in the next one.